The great hall shimmered with gold and crystal, its walls carved with long murals showing centuries of the Calrene Empire's victories. Tall windows let in silver sunlight, casting sharp beams across the polished floor. Every step Liam took echoed, and he could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching him from the balconies above. Some of the onlookers wore expressions of curiosity, but most looked at him with the same distrust one might reserve for a predator kept too close. He understood why. The Calrene were an old and proud people. Their history with humans was short, but full of tense moments, border disputes, trade disagreements, and one near war that still left scars in their politics. Now, he was here to help negotiate a peace treaty that would hopefully stop the quiet hostility from turning into something far worse. A herald in silver armor stepped forward, his voice loud and commanding. "Envoy of the Human Alliance, you are summoned before Her Highness, Princess Sirenia of the Calrene Empire." Liam approached the dais, where the princess sat on a tall seat made of shining black stone. She was younger than he expected, her features sharp but graceful, her eyes a deep, shifting violet. An elaborate crown of silver branches rested on her head. She studied him with a gaze so direct that he felt as if she could see every thought in his mind. In his hands, he carried a small case. As he reached the base of the dais, he opened it, revealing a single flower. It was a deep blue orchid from Earth, rare, grown in human botanical sanctuaries and known for surviving in almost any soil. Liam bowed slightly. "Your Highness, I bring you a gift from my homeworld. This flower is a symbol of resilience and peace." Sirenia did not move. Her gaze flicked to the flower, then back to his face. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. "Why are you being so kind, human? What do you really want?" The room went silent. The advisors and guards shifted slightly, some smirking, others waiting to see how he would react. Calrene culture valued directness, but her tone carried something heavier. Accusation, maybe even hostility. Liam kept his voice steady. "Sometimes kindness is just that, Your Highness. No hidden motive. No demand for return." She tilted, her head, her eyes narrowing. "I have been taught since birth that your kind never gives without expecting something in return. A gift is never free from human hands." "Then perhaps," Liam said, "it is time to learn something new." One of her senior advisors stepped forward. "Princess, we should not waste time with riddles. This treaty is not about flowers." Sirenia ignored him. Her focus remained on Liam. "Your alliance sends you here to speak for them, yet you bring me a fragile thing from your world and expect me to believe it carries no meaning beyond the obvious. Tell me, Envoy, what does this really stand for?" Liam considered his answer. "It stands for survival. This flower has lived through storms, drought, and poor soil, yet it thrives. I thought it might be a reminder that even different worlds can grow together, if given the chance." Some of the Calrene nobles murmured among themselves at his words. Sirenia's expression did not change, but something in her eyes shifted. Less sharp, more curious. She leaned back slightly in her seat. "Words are easy, deeds are harder. We will see if your actions match this message." Liam inclined his head. "That is fair." The herald announced the formal start of the day's session. Matters of trade routes, border patrols, and shared security programs were discussed. Each point met with long debate. Liam spoke calmly, offering solutions that gave ground on some issues while protecting human interests on others. Still, every time he looked up, he caught Sirenia's gaze fixed on him, as if she were still trying to read what lay beneath his words. When the meeting ended, the nobles filed out. Liam expected to be dismissed as well, but the princess spoke, suddenly. "Envoy Rowan, remain. The hall emptied until only they, a pair of guards, and a few of her closest advisors remained. Serenia rose from her seat and descended the dais slowly, her robe trailing behind her. Up close, Liam noticed the faint silver markings along her cheekbones, something between a tattoo and a natural pattern in her skin. She stopped a few paces away. "You know," she said quietly, "every envoy before you tried to impress me, with promises of power, wealth, or advantage for my people. Not one of them brought something with no political weight attached. You expect me to believe you are different?" "I don't expect anything, Your Highness," Liam replied. "I hope that's different." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Hope," she repeated as if testing the word. "In my experience, hope is often a mask for ambition. Or for trust," Liam said. For a brief moment, silence hung between them. Then she turned away. "We shall see, human. Tomorrow there will be a small task. If your kindness is as free as you claim, you will accept it without question." Liam gave a small nod. "I will hear it." She walked back toward the dais, her robe whispering against the floor. "Good. Be ready at dawn." With that, she dismissed him. As he left the great hall, Liam's mind was already turning. Whatever this task was, it would not be simple. He could feel it. And somehow he suspected it would be more than just a test of skill. It would be a test of character. The morning of the change began like any other for Ethan. He walked into the academy's main hall with his head down, carrying his data pad. Students chatted in small groups, their voices a mixture of alien languages and accents. A few glanced his way, some smirking, others ignoring him completely. It was physical training day again. Ethan braced himself for another round of quiet humiliation. The drills began in the gym sphere, and, as always, Jex and his friends found ways to accidentally bump him or block his path. But halfway through the session, something strange happened. The gym's lights flickered for a second, then steadied. A faint vibration hummed through the floor, so subtle that most ignored it. Ethan felt it, though. It was like the station's normal rhythm had shifted. The instructor paused mid-sentence, tilting her head. Her wrist communicator buzzed, and she glanced at it. Her eyes widened slightly before she turned toward the nearest assistant. "Keep them busy," she said quickly. Then she left the gym. The hum in the floor grew stronger. It was not the usual, steady thrum of the station's engines. This was deeper, heavier, like something massive had entered nearby space. Minutes later, the Academy's overhead speakers crackled to life. "Attention all personnel," the voice of the station administrator said, his tone unusually tense. "We have received an incoming vessel identification. All civilian ships are to clear approach lanes immediately. This is a priority Alpha docking," students began whispering. Priority Alpha was rare, reserved for top military officials, high-ranking council members, or royalty. In the gym, training was halted. The instructor tried to keep order, but the younger students were already drifting toward the windows along the far side of the dome. Ethan hesitated, then joined them. When he reached the viewport, his breath caught. There, sliding into view, was a ship unlike anything he had ever seen. It was enormous, so large it blotted out the stars behind it. The hull shimmered with dark silver plating etched with flowing golden patterns. Sharp, wing-like structures extended from the sides, each glowing faintly with blue energy. The front of the ship tapered into a spear-like prow that looked built for both elegance and war. The sight alone was enough to silence every voice in the gym. "That's a Valori Imperial flagship," someone whispered in awe. The words rippled through the students like a current. The Valori Empire was one of the most feared powers in the galaxy. Their ships were said to be unstoppable, their armies unmatched. "What is it doing here?" another student asked, nervous. Maybe an inspection, someone guessed. No, an older alien with pale, ridged skin said quietly. Flagships don't move without purpose, and if that's the Sarathiel, then that's the Empress's ship. The whispers grew louder now, a mixture of fear and excitement. Then the station shuddered as the massive vessel docked. A moment later, the station's announcement system chimed again. Attention! All Academy faculty, please report to the Central Hall immediately. Security units, prepare for high-level escort. Within minutes, the gym session was over, and students were ordered back to the main hall. Guards lined the corridors, their armor gleaming, their weapons at the ready. Ethan walked with the others, feeling the tension in the air. He had no idea why the Veilori were here, but judging by the fearful looks on the teachers' faces, this was far from routine. When the students entered the central hall, they found it already lined with Academy staff, all standing stiffly. The air was thick with anticipation. Then the doors at the far end slid open and a formation of Veilori soldiers marched in. Their armor was crafted from the same dark silver as their ship, with golden lines that pulsed faintly. Each carried a long, ceremonial spear that doubled as a weapon. Their movements were perfect, sharp, disciplined, and silent, except for the sound of boots striking the floor in unison. And then she appeared. The alien woman who stepped into the hall seemed to command the space without speaking. She was tall, her posture straight and regal. Her skin held a faint golden glow, her eyes a luminous violet with shifting patterns like a nebula. She wore a flowing robe over intricately plated armor, and a crown-like crest extended back from her head. Students and staff alike lowered their eyes instinctively. The Empress walked forward with measured steps, the soldiers flanking her in perfect symmetry. She did not glance at anyone, until her gaze landed on Ethan. For a brief second, the noise of the hall seemed to vanish for him. Those glowing violet eyes locked on his, and her expression softened. Just slightly. She crossed the hall toward him, her robe trailing behind, like liquid light. Stopping in front of him, she looked down and spoke in a voice that carried both strength and warmth. "My son," she said softly. But the words still echoed in the vast chamber. "I came as soon as I heard." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The whispers were no longer curious, they were stunned. "Son?" someone muttered nearby. "The human?" another whispered. The Empress turned to the headmaster. "Explain?" "To me," she said, her voice sharper now. "Why my child bears injuries, and why his records show repeated incidents of harm from other students." The headmaster swallowed hard. "Your Highness, do not lie to me," she interrupted. "I have already accessed the Academy's surveillance archives." She raised her hand, and one of her soldiers tapped a device on his wrist. A holographic projection appeared in the air. It showed clips of Ethan being shoved, tripped, and mocked in the halls, the gym, and the cafeteria. The recordings played one after another, the truth undeniable. The bullies' faces drained of color. Even Jex looked frozen, his mouth slightly open. The Empress's gaze swept across the room like a blade. "You will hand over the names of every student involved. My guard will speak with their families." The soldiers moved forward, taking the bullies aside. No one resisted. Turning back to Ethan, she placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You will not be harmed again," she said. Ethan stood there, barely able to process what was happening. A day ago, he was just the quiet human boy everyone mocked. Now, the most powerful woman in the Veilori Empire had just called him her son in front of the entire Academy. The Empress looked around once more, her voice rising so all could hear. "Remember this day," she said. "For my son may be half human, but he is heir to the Veilori throne. Treat him as you would treat me." She turned, her robe swirling as she walked back toward the doors, her soldiers escorting her. And just like that, the room erupted in hushed, frantic voices. Ethan was still standing in the same spot, his mind spinning. Everything had changed in a single moment. But he had no idea that this was only the beginning. The days ahead would bring not just respect, but also new challenges and enemies far more dangerous than schoolyard bullies. The day after the Empress's arrival, the academy felt like a different place. Students who had ignored Ethan now looked at him with curiosity or fear. Some bowed slightly when he passed. Others whispered to each other and quickly glanced away. If he noticed, even the teachers seemed more cautious, speaking to him with careful politeness. It was strange and uncomfortable. Ethan had wanted the bullying to stop, but this was attention he wasn't sure he wanted. He thought his life might return to normal after the dramatic scene in the hall, but it didn't. That morning, instead of joining the other students in the first class, he was called to the academy's private training wing, a place most students never saw. 2 Valori soldiers waited at the door, their silver and gold armor gleaming under the lights. They bowed slightly as he approached. "Prince Ethan," one said formally, "your mother has arranged for special instruction." The title made Ethan blink. Prince. No one had ever called him that before. The soldier opened the door, revealing a wide, high-ceilinged chamber with walls lined in shimmering energy panels. In the center stood 3 figures, 2 Valori warriors and a tall alien woman in a dark blue uniform. The woman stepped forward. "I am Commander Ceres," she said. "Your mother has tasked us with preparing you to defend yourself. You will train in both human and Valori combat methods. Our goal is to make sure no one will ever harm you again." Ethan wasn't sure what to say. "I'm not really a fighter," he admitted. "You will be," Ceres said firmly. "And you will learn fast. The Valori heir cannot be weak." The first few days were exhausting. The training involved physical drills, balance exercises, and precise movement patterns that felt strange to Ethan's body. Valori warriors were taller and stronger, their fighting style built on long reaches and fluid motions. Ethan had to adapt their techniques to his smaller frame. Commander Ceres was strict but fair. She noticed that while Ethan wasn't the fastest or strongest, he learned patterns quickly. When she demonstrated a move, he could copy it after only a few tries. "You have a human mind," she told him one day during practice. "You think in ways Valori warriors do not expect. This can be your advantage." Alongside physical training, Ethan studied strategy. His instructors placed him in simulated battles against both human and alien opponents. He often lost at first, but he learned from each mistake, adjusting his tactics in ways his teachers found unusual. "He improvises," one of the Valori warriors told Ceres after a session. "Most trainees repeat patterns they've learned. He changes them mid-fight." Still, outside the training room, life was complicated. Some students now treated Ethan like royalty, offering him seats, carrying things for him, speaking with forced respect. Others stayed away, as if afraid to even talk to him. But there were a few who clearly resented the change. Jex and his old group of bullies were no longer bold enough to push or insult him openly, but Ethan caught them watching, from across the hall with narrowed eyes. Their smirks were gone, replaced with something colder. One afternoon, as Ethan was leaving training, he overheard 2 students whispering near the entrance. "I heard they're putting him in the interspecies tournament," one said. "The heir of the Valori?" "Of course they are," the other replied. "It'll be a big show. But if he loses, imagine how embarrassing it would be for the Empress." Ethan didn't know much about the tournament, only that it was a major event where students from different academies competed in skill trials and combat matches. It was watched by thousands across the station and even broadcast to nearby worlds. When he asked Commander Ceres about it, she nodded. "Yes. Your mother has already approved your entry. It will be a test of everything you have learned." "But I've only been training for days," Ethan said. "True," Ceres replied. "But the tournament is not only about strength. It is about strategy, adaptability, and resolve. And those You already have. Over the next week, the training intensified. He ran through obstacle courses designed for alien bodies, forcing him to climb walls twice his height, leap gaps, and balance on narrow beams while being pelted with harmless energy bolts. He practiced with various weapons, light staves, shock, blades, and energy discs, learning to turn his size into an advantage by moving faster and using angles taller fighters couldn't match. Cirrus also made him spar with multiple opponents at once. At first, he was overwhelmed, but slowly, he began to use the opponents against each other, dodging so that their attacks collided, creating openings for him to strike. Outside of training, he still attended normal classes. The change in his confidence was subtle but noticeable. When someone made a snide comment, he no longer lowered his eyes or hurried away. He met their gaze, calm and steady, and they looked away first. The whispers about him grew. Some called him the human prince, others the half-blood heir. Rumors spread about his training, stories exaggerated until they made him sound like an unstoppable warrior already. Ethan ignored them. One evening, as training ended, Cirrus handed him a small data slate. "Your first tournament match is in 4 days," she said. "Your opponent will be from the Thraxus species. They are large, heavily armored, and very strong. Do not try to overpower them. Use your speed and your mind." Ethan studied the data on the Thraxus fighter, tall, with 4 arms and dense muscle. Their armor had few weak points, but he noticed the weight of it might slow them down. That night, he stayed awake thinking about the match. He didn't want to embarrass his mother, but he also didn't want to win just because people feared
her.
He wanted to prove, to himself most of all, that he could earn victory on his own skill. The next day, during a rare break, Ethan sat alone in the academy garden. The sky above the station's dome was a simulated twilight, stars beginning to appear. He thought about his father, about Earth, about the years he'd spent being pushed around. He remembered something his father used to say. Strength isn't always about who can hit harder. Sometimes it's about who refuses to fall down. As the tournament drew closer, even students who had ignored him before now seemed curious. Some asked questions about his training. Others offered half-sincere good luck wishes. Jex only smirked when their eyes met, as if already planning something. Ethan suspected the match would be more than just a fight in the arena. The morning of the tournament, he stood in the private locker area, tightening the straps on his training armor. Commander Cirrus stepped in, handing him a short, lightweight staff. "This is your weapon for the first round," she said. "Remember, speed, angles, and thinking ahead. Trust yourself, Ethan." He nodded, gripping the staff. His heartbeat was steady, not calm, but focused. In a few minutes, he would step into the arena before hundreds in the stands and countless more watching across the galaxy. For the first time, he wasn't just the human kid they laughed at. He was the son of the Valori Empress, and he intended to show them that meant more than just a title. The arena was alive with sound. Cheers, alien voices calling out in different languages, and the steady hum of the energy shields that surrounded the combat floor. Banners of various academy houses floated above, glowing with bright colors. Ethan stood at the tunnel entrance, gripping his lightweight staff. Commander Cirrus stood beside him, calm as ever. "You know your plan," she reminded him. "Speed, angles, and focus. The Thraxus will try to crush you with brute force. Let him try." Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the bright floor ahead. "Combatants," a deep voice echoed over the speakers. "Enter the arena!" He stepped out into the light, the roar of the crowd washing over him. Across the arena, the Thraxus fighter emerged from his own tunnel. He was massive, towering over Ethan by at least 2 feet, his 4 muscular arms covered in thick, scaled armor. His eyes were small, glowing orange, and fixed on Ethan like a predator sizing up prey. The announcer's voice boomed. "First, Round, Ethan of the Valori line versus Grak of the Thraxis brood. Grak pounded his chest with all four fists, making a deep booming sound. The crowd answered with cheers and shouts. Ethan simply stood ready, his staff held low, waiting for the signal. The starting bell rang. Grak charged. The ground seemed to shake with each step. Ethan darted to the side, the Thraxis swinging one massive arm at him. The staff whistled through, the air just behind his head. Ethan spun away, using his smaller size to stay just out of reach. The crowd cheered at the speed of the movement, though most thought it was only a matter of time before Grak caught him. Grak swung again, this time, with two arms together, trying to grab Ethan. Ethan ducked low, rolling to the side, and struck the back of Grak's leg with his staff. The blow wasn't strong enough to harm, but it made Grak stumble for a moment. Ethan moved again before the Thraxis could recover. The match continued like this. Grak attacking with raw strength, Ethan slipping away, countering with quick, sharp strikes to slow him down. The crowd began to notice the pattern. "He's tiring him out!" someone shouted from the stands. Still, Ethan could feel his own stamina being tested. His breathing grew heavier, sweat running down his face. He knew he couldn't keep dodging forever. Then he saw it. Grak's armor, while thick, had small gaps at the joints for movement. One was at the back of his right knee. When Grak charged again, Ethan didn't dodge completely. Instead, he pivoted, just enough for the Thraxis to miss, and struck that gap with all his strength. Grak roared in pain and dropped to one knee. The crowd erupted. Before Gray could stand, Ethan moved behind him, striking the same spot twice more in quick succession. The Thraxis wobbled, then collapsed forward, his arms hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The referee's voice rang out. "Match over! Victor, Ethan of the Valori line!" The arena exploded with noise, cheers, applause, even surprised laughter. Ethan stood still for a moment, his chest rising and falling quickly. Then he looked up at the stands where his mother sat. The Empress was smiling, just slightly, but it was enough. Back in the preparation room, Commander Saris clapped him on the shoulder. "You fought well. Not perfect, but smart. The Valori way is strength, but your way, your human way, is cleverness. Never forget that." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Thanks." His victory spread quickly through the academy. Students who once mocked him now spoke of his skill in the arena. Some wanted to be on his side for the rest of the tournament. Others, like Jex, watched from the shadows, silent but clearly unhappy. The second round came 2 days later. This time, his opponent was a swift, bird-like alien from the Kalari species. Unlike Grak, this fighter didn't rely on brute force. Instead, she was fast. Faster than Ethan in straight speed. As soon as the match began, she attacked in a blur of movement. Ethan barely managed to block her first few strikes. He quickly realized that his usual tactic of dodging and countering wouldn't work here. She was too quick. So he shifted his focus to predicting her moves instead. By watching, the way her talons flexed before she lunged, Ethan could guess where she would strike. After a few minutes, he began blocking just before the attack landed, forcing her to back off. The crowd cheered as the fight grew more intense, both fighters moving at high speed, their weapons clashing again and again. Finally, Ethan saw an opening. She always shifted her right foot before sweeping low. He let her think he was too slow to react, then leapt over the sweep and struck her shoulder with his staff. A second point, then a third, and the match was his. As the tournament progressed, Ethan began to notice something. The more he fought, the less people saw him as the human kid, and the more they saw him as a serious competitor. But his victories also drew attention from people outside the academy. Whispers reached him that certain factions in the Valori Empire didn't like the idea of a half-human heir gaining popularity. One evening, as he left training, he overheard 2 Imperial guards speaking quietly near a doorway. "Word is, some of the nobles think he's dangerous," one said. "Because he's winning?" the other asked. "Because he's proving himself. came the reply. "And that makes him harder to control." Ethan walked away without saying anything, but the words stayed with him. The semi-final match arrived. His opponent was none other than Jex. The arena was packed. Everyone wanted to see this fight. It wasn't just a tournament match, it was the final settling of years of tension. Jex grinned as they stepped into the arena. "Time to see what all your training is really worth." The bell rang. Jex attacked aggressively, but unlike before, his strikes were precise. He had trained too, and he wasn't going to make the same mistakes. The first few minutes were evenly matched. Ethan dodged and countered, but Jex's reach and strength made it hard to get close. Then Jex switched tactics, forcing Ethan into the corner of the arena. It looked like he had the upper hand, but Ethan remembered something Commander Saris had taught him. When trapped, change the shape of the fight. Instead of trying to push past Jex, Ethan dropped low, rolling between his legs. Before Jex could turn, Ethan struck the back of his knee, scoring a point. The crowd roared. Jex attacked. Harder, but his frustration showed. Ethan stayed calm, waiting for the right moment. When it came, a wide, overconfident swing, Ethan ducked and struck again. The third and final point came when Jex charged recklessly, and Ethan sidestepped, using his staff to hook Jex's ankle and make him stumble. The match was over. Ethan had won. As the referee declared the victory, Ethan offered Jex a hand to help him up. For a moment, Jex hesitated, then took it. "You're better than I thought," Jex admitted quietly. With the finals approaching, Ethan knew the challenge ahead would be his hardest yet. But for the first time in his life, he felt ready, not because of his mother's title, but because of what he had proven to himself. And somewhere high above in the stands, the Empress was already watching. Her eyes filled not just with pride, but with the awareness that her son was becoming something far greater than anyone had expected. The arena had never been this full. Every seat was taken, and the noise was like a living thing. Cheers, shouts, and the sound of drums and alien instruments echoing through the massive chamber. Banners of many colors waved, and giant screens displayed the two remaining names. Final match: Ethan of the Valori line versus Koro of the Dravic clans. Koro's reputation was fierce. He was older, stronger, and undefeated for 3 years in his division. Dravics were known for their endurance and raw power, their dark, scaled skin resistant to most strikes. Many in the crowd whispered that Ethan's run would end here. Behind the arena doors, Ethan stood with Commander Saris. His staff felt light in his hands, but his heartbeat was steady. "Remember," Saris said, looking him in the eyes, "it's not just about winning. It's about showing everyone who you are. Fight with control, not anger. Adapt. Survive." Ethan nodded. The announcer's deep voice echoed, "Combatants, enter the arena." The door opened and the light poured in. Ethan stepped forward into the roar of the crowd. Across from him, Koro entered, his massive frame casting a long shadow on the arena floor. His scales glinted under the lights, and his eyes, sharp and predatory, locked on Ethan immediately. When the starting bell rang, Koro didn't rush, like Grak had. Instead, he advanced slowly, each step deliberate, his weapon, an energy glaive, held ready. Ethan circled, keeping distance, searching for an opening. Koro moved like a wall, forcing Ethan to back toward the edge of the combat zone. Then, without warning, Koro lunged. The glaive came in a wide, fast arc. Ethan barely blocked it, the force of the hit sending a jolt up his arms. The crowd reacted with a mix of cheers and gasps. Koro pressed forward, using his reach to keep Ethan on the defensive. Each strike was heavy, each block shaking Ethan's muscles. He knew he couldn't take this for long, so he changed tactics. Instead of retreating, Ethan stepped closer during the next attack, slipping inside Koro's reach. He struck twice at the gaps in the Dravic's armor, not enough to score a point, but enough to make him shift position. "You're quick," Koro said in a low, rumbling voice, "but speed won't save you forever." "Maybe not," Ethan replied, but thinking might. The match became a careful dance. Koro tried to corner Ethan, but Ethan refused to move where Koro wanted. Each time Koro advanced, Ethan sidestepped, forcing him to turn and adjust. The first point came when Koro made a powerful overhead swing. Ethan rolled forward under it, tapped the side of Koro's leg, and darted away before the Dravik could react. The crowd roared. Koro smiled faintly, as if accepting the challenge. His attacks grew sharper, faster. Ethan found himself forced into riskier dodges, one swing grazing his armor hard enough to make him stumble. Then came the moment Koro tried to end it. He feinted high, then swung low at Ethan's legs. Ethan jumped, barely clearing the strike, and landed just behind Koro. He struck the gap in the armor at the back of the knee, scoring a second point. The cheers were deafening now, but Koro was not finished. With a roar, he charged, driving Ethan back with relentless strikes. Ethan blocked and dodged, but his arms burned from the effort. The third round point was in reach for either of them now. Finally, Koro drove him near the arena wall. It looked like the end, but Ethan remembered what Cirrus had said. Adapt. When Koro swung for his head, Ethan ducked, letting the glaive slam into the arena wall's energy shield. The weapon bounced, slightly from the impact, and in that split second, Ethan lunged forward, tapping Koro's chest plate with his staff. A bright flash signaled the third and final point. The referee's voice rang out, "Match over! Victor! Ethan of the Valori line!" The arena erupted in cheers so loud that the floor seemed to vibrate. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, his staff lowered. Across the floor, Koro nodded in respect before leaving the arena. As the crowd continued to cheer, the Empress rose from her seat in the high stands. She descended to the arena floor, her royal guards flanking her. When she reached Ethan, the noise dimmed as if the entire place was holding its breath. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You fought with skill, patience, and honor," she said, her voice carrying across the arena. "You have shown the galaxy that your strength is not just from your bloodline, but from your will." She turned to face the crowd. "This is my son, heir to the Valori Empire. Today you have seen what it means to be both human and Valori." The cheers rose again, louder than ever. For Ethan, it wasn't just the victory that mattered. It was the feeling that, for the first time, he had earned the respect of everyone watching. Not because they feared his mother, but because they had seen his true self. Later that evening, the Academy held a small ceremony in his honor. Students came forward to congratulate him, some sincerely, some perhaps still nervous about the Empress. Even Jex approached. "You proved yourself," Jex said quietly. "Guess I was wrong about you?" "Maybe you were," Ethan replied with a faint smile. After the ceremony, Ethan walked to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly outside the glass, the Valori flagship still docked nearby, glowing faintly in the dark. His mother joined him there, her presence silent for a moment. Then she spoke. "When I sent you here, I thought it would keep you safe until you were ready to take your place in the Empire. I did not expect you to become ready so quickly." "I didn't do it alone," Ethan said. "You sent the right people to help me." She gave a small nod. "But you listened. You learned. That is what makes a leader." They stood in silence, for a while, watching the distant lights of ships moving between stars. "What happens now?" Ethan asked. "Now," the Empress said, "you will continue to learn. But not just here. There are worlds to see, alliances to build. You will come with me." Ethan looked out at the stars again. The idea of leaving the Academy, the place where he had been mocked and bullied, felt right. He had faced it, changed it, and now it was time to move forward. "All right," he said, a quiet determination in his voice. His mother placed a hand on his shoulder again. "Good. The galaxy is wide, my son. And after today, it knows your name. And so, the boy who had once walked the halls of the academy with his head down left it as a champion, and as the heir to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. But more importantly, he left knowing who he truly was and what he could become. And that was only the beginning. If you want, I can now create a full compiled document of all 5 parts in order, so you have the complete story in one place, ready for sharing or formatting. Do you want me to prepare that? Ask ChatGPT.